All across Ireland, people are coming out onto the streets. They're protesting against immigration. They're protesting against the government. And the resounding battle cry, the length and breadth of Ireland, is so-and-so says no. Dublin says no. Carrickmacross says no. Kilkenny says no. Galway says no. You name it, everyone's saying no. But it doesn't seem to be a message that's getting through into the government's ears. John Wilson is joining me here this morning. We're just going to look at the developments, some sinister developments that have happened this week in relation to the purchase of a humongous hotel, conference centre and 50 acres of ground by the Irish state, the first of many purchases, I believe, John, that's going to go on. This message of Ireland says no doesn't seem to be getting through into the eardrums of those that are inhabiting or infesting the Dáil at the minute. What do you think?
Hello, hi Rick. To date, the government are treating the new nationalist movement as nothing more than an irritation, the same way that an elephant would treat a fly that lands on its ear. They are just regarding us as an irritation. You mentioned City West, and the 50 acres of land, as you rightly said, should be more of a concern to people than just a mere purchase of the hotel. And you mentioned all of the areas, the various says no groups. There's a protest this evening in Kinnegad, and they warrant the support of anyone that's available to attend. But the purchase of the hotel at the moment are in the region of 2,500.
Sorry, John, that's the Kinnegad group, by the way. I heard about that protest this morning.
Yes.
I want to draw a little bit of attention. Sorry for cutting across you, but that's their banner. Kinnegad, I believe, is in Meath. Is that correct? Down in Meath?
Westmeath.
Westmeath, yeah.
Yeah. It needs to be, they need support. And I think that the new nationalist movement is growing organically, but it's not growing fast enough. We would be delusional to think otherwise. I think the majority of people in this country are still remaining silent. They're still too busy watching their soaps to attend these protest meetings. I think, we're going to have to, Irish people have a decision to make. Do we want to save our country, or are we willing to watch our country being destroyed? Are we willing to lose our country? Because we are losing our country, and we are rapidly becoming a minority in this country.
And that's, some people would listen to this, maybe those from outside of Ireland, or even many of those inside of Ireland, saying, John, come on, you're being a bit melodramatic there. We're not losing the country. We're not losing the country. And I think what's happening at the moment is there's a lot of people that are still in a bubble. Okay, they're still in a comfortable little leafy suburban bubble. And there's always this belief, that mentality, it'll never happen to me. You might hear about a violent crime on TV, or a terrible car crash, or some terrible disaster can befall someone, and you shake your head and you tut, and you in full sympathy, and you say, well, that'll never happen to me. I think there's a lot of people living in bubbles at the minute all across Ireland. And sooner rather than later, those bubbles are going to begin to pop as the problem does come, not just to their doorsteps, but possibly into their own neighbourhoods and into their own houses too.
The I'm all right, Jack mentality is alive and well in Ireland. And you are 100% correct. It doesn't affect my area. It doesn't affect my region. So I'm not going to go out and protest. I mean, why should I bother? It doesn't affect me. This problem is affecting many parts of the country, and it is going to affect every single town and village in Ireland as our government become more desperate to find accommodation for these bogus asylum seekers, for these invaders, because that's what they are. This is going to affect everybody, and it's not a case of protesting in your own little village or whatever. And if the people in a particular village or town prevent an outpass centre from setting up in their particular area, they should then move on and protest in the next village, and assist the people in the next village and in the next town, and so on and so forth throughout all of this country. We are at war for the survival of the Irish race. Now, in relation to answer your specific question, in 1998, if I had told the loyalists and the unionists in Northern Ireland that by 2025 they would be a minority in Northern Ireland, they would have called me an alarmist and a conspiracy theorist. Well, we're in 2025, and the loyalists and the unionists in Northern Ireland are a minority. That's only in a short, in the short time frame of
30 to 40 years.
Not even 30 years. The last 27 years. The last 20 years, you could say. Okay, that's where we are rapidly heading. Okay, we Irish people will be a minority in this country within a few short decades. Tucker Carlson said some time ago that in 100 years' time, Irish people will be a minority in Ireland. It will not take 100 years. Within the next 2 decades, we're going to have a very good idea of where we're going to ultimately end up. Okay, we are only a small little, as I've said many times in the last few months, Irish people are only 0.06% of the population of the world. Okay, that's all we are. We are a small ethnic minority in world terms, right? We are facing oblivion here. We are facing the destruction of the Irish race. And I'm fed up with people. People are trying to be nice. We don't want unvetted men in this area. Unvetted. I don't give a damn if they're vetted or unvetted. They should not be in Ireland. They are invaders. They should not be in this country. They should be thrown out as soon as they arrive. End of story. And that's before we get on to talk about the EU Migration Pact, which is a death warrant for the Irish race.
One other thing that we have to bring into this equation is something that people forget about in the focus on the amount of people piling into Ireland. Okay, this is set against the backdrop actually of 2 other factors. Number one, a lot of young Irish people are leaving. They're emigrating somewhere else because they can't afford the rents. They haven't got job prospects. They can't get onto the housing ladder. So as people come in, young Irish people and older Irish people are leaving Ireland at the minute, and the birth rates are dropping as well. So it's like a perfect storm of catastrophe. Even if the young people were staying and people were still having 2.4 children or whatever, you know, that statistic is, or more, 3 or 4 or 5 children per family, there might even be a balancing here, but it's not. There is no balancing. It's almost like, you know, the both taps are on the bath. And instead of at least the plug being open that some of the water could drain away, the plug's in, both taps are on, and we're coming dangerously close to the tip of the bath when the whole damn thing's going to overflow.
Young men, young Irish men and young Irish women are leaving this country in their droves. And not just young men and young women. There are lots of middle-aged people leaving this country as well, and they are a forgotten demographic. Okay? But they are literally meeting their replacements at the airports and at the ferry ports. I mean, that's a fact. That's not alarmist. That's actually a fact. Our population is continuing to grow while our young, you know, while many of our young people and you know, are being driven out of the country, are being forced to leave Ireland for a better life, to survive. They've been forced to leave Ireland. That is a damning indictment on our political establishment. I'm not just singling out any particular political party on our entire political establishment. That is a damning indictment.
I heard a comment made this week, actually, believe it or not, and it was someone trying to defend the position of, you know, the housing crisis and, you know, the strain on our infrastructure. And one of the factors they said was contributing to that was Irish people coming back home again from overseas. They were actually adding to the housing stress problem, adding to the infrastructure problem, to actually lump returning people, Irish folk, back into coming home again. That was another one of the narratives. So the City West thing, I want to look at that because I don't think this is a massive story. It's a big headline, and people are focusing in on the figure that's being paid for this hotel. Now, it's a huge hotel just outside of Dublin. It's been out of action for years. It was used as a COVID testing center. Then it was used for Ukrainian refugees. Now it's a so-called IPAS Center for International Protection Accommodation Services. 2,000 odd people in there at the minute. And the figure that's been paid for that by the Irish state, or will be paid for that, is, let's call it 150 million euro. It's 148.2. Let's call it 150. People are zoning in on that number, and rightly so. It's an astronomical number. But the amount of gymnastics, fiscal gymnastics, that's being performed by Jim O'Callaghan, and I think it's Colm Brophy, his little pint-sized friend, they took the podium yesterday to try and justify this to the Irish people, say, well, actually, it's going to pay for itself in 4 years, and over 10 years, we'll save 1 point something billion. There's also
How?
A conference centre and 50 acres of land around this. I want to play a quick video clip. This was taken at the press conference yesterday by Jim O'Callaghan. I want to play it. I want to get your reaction to it. And I want to look at this sinister program of government that they keep banging on about, where they talk about we need to up our units to 14,000 owned by the state over the next few years to meet EU obligations. So let's hear Big Jim.
And €2 million. And that's going to result in a significant saving over a period up to 4 years. We'll have really reached savings in respect of it. So it's going to be far cheaper in the long term in terms of owning it, as opposed to the cost that we're paying at present per person in the accommodation. The reason why we wanted to bring this proposal to government today was because it really does represent value for money in terms of the amount of money we're spending on the private commercial sector, as opposed to the savings that can be achieved if we own our own accommodation. And over a period of 4 years, we believe we'll be in a position where we will have got our money back in terms of the investment. And over a longer period of time, if you compare what we're spending in the private sector from the amount of money we'll be spending in terms of a state-owned entity, over a period of about 25 years, we'll be looking at a saving of 1.25 billion.
Let's stop right there. I mean, like, there's a lot of facts and figures flying around there. Jim standing there in his suit. Beautiful backdrop. I think this was actually filmed at City West Hotel. So it's not like it's some dive that they've bought over to stick people in. This is state-of-the-art luxury 4-star hotel accommodation set in 50 acres of ground. Well, what, 15,000 people, including 5,000 children in Ireland, are currently living in emergency style accommodation at the minute. Where's the checkbook for them, John?
Jim O'Callaghan was sent out to make that speech. And with the greatest respect to you, Jim, you were quoting directly from the little book of bollocks. Okay. They're going to spend at least, it'll be over 150 million euro when the transaction is completed. Okay. It will cost, now they didn't buy the 50 acres for nothing. Okay. I did a little back of the envelope estimation about the price of houses and how many houses you can fit on an acre. And you can fit about 5 average sized houses on 1 acre of ground. Okay. So what, 50, 55, you know, you're talking about what, 250 houses. Now they're average size houses, but they won't do that. Okay, now then you can double that if you want to talk about modular homes. You put, I mean, that's over double that amount of modular homes on that site, but they have bigger plans. I suspect that they're planning to build large apartment blocks in that 50 acres.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You would get 2 massive sized apartment blocks per acre, 2 per acre. So 50 acres. That's, you could build 100 massive apartment blocks on 50 acres. Okay, and put in. And we're going to end up, as you rightly said, we'll end up with tens of thousands of bogus asylum seekers and invaders living on this site. You know, that's where we're heading. Okay, he's talking about value for money. This is not an industrial complex, a manufacturing complex he's talking about. Okay, this is a big, massive plantation center. Okay, it's going to cost billions of euro to fully develop that site. Now they didn't buy the 50 acres to have a golf course for the IPAS applicants, no. for the plan, you know, for the invaders. Okay, they bought the 50 acres to develop the 50 acres, and they are going to build. I'd be surprised if they don't build apartment blocks, because they want to shove in as many of these invaders into the City West complex as they possibly can. What Jim O'Callaghan and what Mr. Brophy were actually telling the Irish people, they were saying, people of Ireland, you are going to be a minority in your own country, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's my interpretation for those 2 speeches.
I'll keep playing this, but what you've touched on as well is the looking at that big fat parcel of land, like prime land on the outskirts of Dublin, 50 acres. And you talked about modular accommodation. You talked about houses, first of all. No, they ain't going to be putting houses on there. Modular accommodation, no. Those are the multi-stories. At the minute, I understand there's a big development going on in Sligo. And I did a story about this about maybe a month ago, say 5 weeks ago anyway. You can look it back through my timeline, but people in the area were concerned that land had been bought up and there was a complex being developed. There were 3 stories, possibly 4 stories, multiple units per story, multiple beds per unit, with communal car parking, conference, you name it, the children's play parks, the whole shebang in Sligo. So my opinion on this is that this will, and most people don't even know what's happening in Sligo. It's not somewhere that pops up in conversation very much. The focus is very much in Dublin and possibly into Cork. And you know what I mean? Sligo's an outlier. But I think what's happening in Sligo, and if you're listening to this, go and check out what's going on in Sligo in terms of building iPass in Sligo. And I think you're going to see that on steroids in City West. So let's hear the remainder of Jim's little speech, and then little Brophy pipes in at the end of it too, talking about we're not planning on developing that land. We're not planning on it right now. In other words, they're going to do it. So let's hear what he has to say here. Hang on.
That's the primary reason why Colm and myself advocated it.
Oh, let me get this on.
Indeed, it's completely consistent with what's in the programme for government. As you are aware, in the programme for government, we committed to owning 14,000 accommodation units for the purpose of persons seeking temporary or international protection, and this is consistent with it in terms of purchasing accommodation that the state will own, and where people can have accommodation whilst their asylum applications are being processed. We think it's a much more efficient system rather than going around the country trying to secure on a private basis interim accommodation. Certainly if you look at the International Protection Bill, we have a requirement to establish screening centres where applications for asylum will be processed. Certainly that will be the case in respect of City West, and as Colm has indicated, there's no immediate plans to increase numbers there.
We are not planning on changing those numbers, so it is really important that we recognise what is happening here today is actually a value for money. It's the state basically saying that by directly owning City West, we can save approximately 50% of the operating costs, which the Minister has outlined, and that really is a tremendous benefit, not just to the local taxpayers in City West, but to every taxpayer in the country in terms of providing a value for money in the area of providing iPaaS services.
Well, there you go. Tremendous, tremendous value for money to the taxpayer. And no, both of them said, we have no plans to develop the land around us. There are no plans to, I mean, come on. How did they say that with a straight face?
Colm Brophy too was quoting directly from the Little Book of Bollocks, the same as Jim O'Callaghan. You'll notice that they didn't mention quotas or kind of cut-off points, or they didn't mention that we're not going to take in, that we're going to have limits on the people invading our country. No. Value for money. What value for money, you fools? What value for money? The vast majority of what your government are allowing in to destroy our country are from the third world. Okay. They are from cultures that have no place in a Western society. All cultures are not the same. These people will never integrate in Ireland. They will never integrate in Ireland. They should not be allowed. They should not be allowed into our country. They're all bogus. Every one of these individuals travel through safe countries to get to Treasure Ireland. Okay, they're all bogus asylum seekers. But no mention about limits, no mention about, well, we can only take so much. Okay, we can only take so many of these people. Okay, no. The borders are open. Roddy O'Gorman invited the third world to Ireland. He promised to give them their own keys, keys of their own apartments and their own houses by 2024. Okay, what that man did, I have to be careful in what I say. Okay. But I can tell you something else. I'm not very, very happy, and neither are many people in this country, about what he did. Okay, we are the go-to place. We are now the number one go-to place for all of these bogus asylum seekers. We are the number one. We are the weak link in the European chain, and we are facing the annihilation of the Irish race within a very, very short number of years. Okay, I cannot fully get across to your viewers the trouble that we're in here in this country. We are literally fighting for the survival of the Irish race. No numbers, kind of no limits, no cutoff, there's no cutoff point, from such and such a date we're taking nobody else into this country. No. The more the merrier. That's the message that our government are pushing out to the Irish people. The more the merrier, right? And they're doing so on the knowledge. They have still managed to keep the lid on the pressure cooker. that I believe is that, I believe this lid is going to blow off at some time in the near future. I don't condone violence. I never will condone violence. But what they're doing is absolute treachery. And they're there talking as if they're in the company of the CEOs of some of the FDIs from America, foreign direct investment companies from America. You would think that they were talking about a new industrial estate, about a new massive manufacturing complex. No, they're talking about plantation centers. They're talking about people trafficking centers. This is treachery on a scale that has never ever been seen in Ireland before, or I'd say anywhere else in the world before. We are literally losing our country in real time, and these two individuals are out kind of they're trying to spin. They're trying to convince the people of Ireland that we're saving money. What? Who the hell do they think they're talking to?
No. If you listen to there's some key figures in all of this, right? Some key figures. Number one is the amount of money that was spent, 150 million, nice round figure, huge wad of money, but being spun that it'll pay for itself within 4 years.
Brilliant.
And then notice another key figure was 25. So O'Callaghan stood up there and said, over the next 25 years, it could result in real cost savings of 1 billion or more to the Irish taxpayer. So he's talking about a quarter of a century here. This is not something that they're setting up, like a pop-up tent or, tent city that appeared along the grass.
This is a long-term plan.
This is a minimum of a quarter of a century.
Value for money, spending 150 million euro of Irish taxpayers' money. It will take, if the Children's Hospital is to be used as a benchmark for developing public land, or to build hospitals or to build structures. We're talking, there would be a minimum spend of at least 2 billion.
Easy.
2 billion euro to develop the City Park or the City West site. Okay, it will cost at least 2 billion euro of Irish taxpayers' money to fully develop that site into what they want. Okay, that's a minimum of 2 billion. Now, if they go building apartments, yourself, but by the time the apartments are built, they'll have cost a trillion euro. Okay, I can't understand the mentality. We have Viktor Orban in Hungary, who's under constant attack from the EU bureaucrats. He has said, no, Hungary belongs to the Hungarians. You're not coming in to destroy our country. That's it. And he's been lambasted that they are spending billions of euros trying to undermine him, to try and have him removed from government. Have him removed from office, right? The Polish are kicking back as well, which you won't hear on RTE radio or RTE television or in Virgin Media or the rest of our mainstream fucking media, right? We cannot get enough. We are the good boys and the good girls in Europe, okay? And we will do whatever we are told to do.
Yeah.
Right. It is so frustrating and it is so annoying. Then, in combination with that, we have journalists and news talk saying that we're all far right if we have the Irish flag flying outside our houses. This is insane what's happening here. But they're doing so in the knowledge that still there's a very sizable percentage of our people are still asleep. They haven't woken up yet. Okay. They're afraid of being called hurty words in the media. They're afraid of being labelled far right and other hurty words by our mainstream media. Ireland is still a bastion of the mainstream media, Rick, and people think that social media, with social media has taken over here. It has not. Okay, Ireland is still, social media influence is growing in Ireland. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be a total pessimist. Okay, but the mainstream, Ireland is still one of the last bastions of the mainstream media in Europe and in the world. Okay,
but the social media.
Jim O'Callaghan and the other minister there, they were talking to Mickey, Joe and Maureen sitting in front of their televisions watching the 6-1 news, or the 9 o'clock news on RTE. That's who they were talking to there. They weren't talking to Rick Munn or John Wilson or Gavin Pepper or Philip Dwyer.
No,
they were talking.
I haven't been invited on for comment for any of these shows yet.
No, and you won't be either.
Even though my reach or my viewership, when they put these things up on their own YouTube pages and social media pages, they've less people watching them, and I'd be happy to come on, as I'm sure you would be too, as a commentator. I would ask to be recorded live. I wouldn't want to do a pre-recorded, say I'll come on and speak about whatever you want live, but they won't do that because they know damn rightly that you have a voice, a powerful voice. I I have a reasonable idea of what's going on myself. I can articulate it in a simple enough way. I'm not a genius. I'm not a rocket. I'm not an expert pundit, but I'm not stupid either. I know what I see, and I know what I'm experiencing when I go out and I speak to people in various towns and villages in Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, Eastern Ireland, Western Ireland, even in the middle of Ireland. It's the same thing. But this stumbling in somnambulance, there's an old punk band called the Misfits from New York, okay, and they had a song called Night of the Living Dead, and
70s.
one of the lyrics in that was stumble in somnambulance, and what that means is sleepwalking, stumbling and lurching along in a sleepwalking type state. And I feel that's what a lot of people are still in, that somnambulant state in Ireland at the minute. They just don't see it. And for example, and I want to set this against the backdrop because I want to bring people's attention to this as well. There is what could arguably be, depending on how things turn out at the weekend, although the weather's to be good, the atmosphere, the hype is very high in and around this, coming off the back of Cork and the previous Dublin protest, national protest, Garden of Remembrance, Parnell Square, Dublin, 22nd of June, which is this Sunday at 2 p.m. I just want to bring attention to that one as well. There's huge expectation around this in terms of, number one, the numbers of people that may turn out. If it's at least as many as last time, which it should be, or you would hope, if not more, you could see pushing up to 100,000 people in Dublin on Sunday. That will probably not get mainstream media coverage. And again, this fingers in the ears thing with the government. You know, you have this protest, John, which is arguably going to be one of the biggest Ireland has seen in recent history, okay, set against the backdrop of Jim O'Callaghan and Brophy standing there talking about 25-year plans to put a literal village or a town, it'll be the Ellis Island. It'll be like Ellis Island in Dublin. So are they just treating the like of this, for example, with complete disdain and just thinking we're okay? Because to be honest with you, most Irish people don't give a damn about people walking down Parnell from the Garden of Remembrance waving tricolours. I do, you do, but the government, are they almost being complacent, just completely dismissing and flippant about it, saying, let them walk. We've bought City West. We've got a 25-year plan. We don't care if Dublin says no. We say yes.
We need to get at least at some stage, at some time in the future, well, in the near future, we need to get at least 1 million people marching on the streets of Dublin. If we can get 1 million Irish people on the streets of Dublin, or over 1 million people, they can't ignore us any longer.
No.
And as I said to you the last time, it's great. Okay, I'm going to go. I know people are going to go on Sunday that never went before. There's a busload going from Carrymacross and hopefully from the RD as well. Okay, and from many other areas throughout the country. Okay, that's great. It's fantastic. All right, and we'll all go up there and we'll all wave our flags and we'll all march down O'Connell Street down to the Customs House or down to Liberty Hall there, and we'll have there will be a number of speeches. Okay, we'll all then feel very good. We'll feel fantastic, and we'll all head back to our buses and our cars, and we'll travel back to the various parts of the country, from Cork to Donegal and everywhere in between. All right. But what does that solve? Okay, we need to meet the protests are fantastic, and I'm going to Kinnigat. I'm going to Kinnigat myself tonight. Okay, and I will proudly stand with the people of Kinnigat. All right, and as I've said on numerous times before, when these fools start calling us outsiders, just want to reiterate, every Irish man and every Irish woman is a local in every part of Ireland. End of story. The outsiders are the invaders that are coming in and destroying our areas, destroying our country. Okay? But here's the thing. We need a proper leadership structure in this new Irish nationalist movement. It's the only nationalist movement we have.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We are growing organically. Yes, we are. But too many people are still reluctant to turn out to these protests. They're still reluctant to be seen protesting or to be seen. They privately they may express the same views that we do, but they're afraid to stand out to get out of their comfort zones and protest. Okay, now There was a meeting a couple of days ago in Oldcastle. About 100, maybe a couple of hundred people turned up. Okay, this guy, you know, this is how people pressure works, people power works, and people don't read. To get this into, to instill this into people's heads is very, very difficult. Okay, we turned up outside this this hotel, or this it's been up and used at the moment, hotel in Oldcastle, and this man came out and he stood on an empty beer barrel, and he said, "I have good news for you. I got a letter from a local Fianna Fáil TD and from the local Sinn Féin TD, and they assured me that this premises is not going to be used as a night pass centre. Okay, even though an application had been made, section 5, an application had been made for a night pass centre back in March and had been granted, but no one knows who made the application. Right, those two letters." You know, the contents, the content of those two letters, okay, it's akin to two foxes sending a letter, you know, promising they're not going to break into your hen house.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? These people, these parties are actively involved in the destruction of our country. Actively involved. And you can say, well, Sinn Féin have never been in power. Sinn Féin have a mantra of Brits out and everyone else in.
That's right.
Everyone else in. Brits out and everyone else in. That's their mantra now. They regard us as far right, as being a far right, you know, domestic terrorists. We have everybody involved in the anti-mass immigration movement is known as we're all fascists, we're all far right, we're labeled now. A Sinn Féin councillor, right? A Sinn Féin councillor turned up at the protest, okay? A very pleasant man. I spoke to him and I said, right, you're here today. And I says, but there's another Sinn Féin councillor. I said, what's the Sinn Féin policy on mass uncontrolled immigration? I said, you have a colleague in Dublin called DUBLIN. He stood outside the GPO as we were all as we were protesting. When we were protesting on the 26th of April last, and he was calling us all fascists and far right. Like Sinn Féin, Brits out, and everyone else in. That's their motto. And people at hope. People at hope. I told you before, I was 100% sure that Mary Lou MacDonald would be the first female Taoiseach of Ireland. I was 100% sure 5 years ago. Now, 1%, 2%, maybe 3% at the tops, you know.
Simon Harris beat her to it, John, becoming the first female Taoiseach of Ireland. Anyway,
it's the way you tell them, you know, as Frank Carson used to say. Listen, Simon Harris, I'd say, and there's no point just singling him out alone. Simon Harris and Micheál Martin, and you could throw in Leo Varadkar, the three weakest leaders we've ever had in this country. But always remember, weak men are dangerous men. And there's a female commentator, she was at the protest in Cork, and she attends all the protests. She talks about the cobbled together Irish government. This is not a cobbled together Irish government. This is a strong Irish government, and they will be in power for the next 4.5 years at least. And they can do an awful lot of damage to Ireland in the next 4.5 years.
Well, that puts a lot of urgency then on what we're talking about today, and really what I wanted to get your opinions on were this development with City West, because it was announced really 2 days ago. It's been building up now for weeks, if not months. You know, the expectation's been there. Will they? Won't they? They've now announced it, and I think now the penny's beginning to drop of this whole push towards state-owned iPass centres with the view to expanding them and looking at a minimum of 20. They're talking about quarter of a century here, John. It's a 25-year plan. This is not something that's going to go away in 5 years. This is going to something that's going to keep multiplying, and this will be exacerbated. So I suppose you would say, I want to draw attention to that just today with you. I also want to draw attention to, to what's happening tonight, because these regional protests, in my opinion, are as important, if not more important, than the bigger ones in Dublin and Cork, because you're going to get a lot of people going to Dublin and Cork. They're going to be drawn there because of the spectacle and the scale, but you need to have lots of little pockets springing up the length and breadth of Ireland, for example, in Kinnegad or in the smaller places like RD or in Carrickmacross or Castleblaney or wherever it happens to be. You need to have these expanding at a local level that they can all merge together. And maybe then, John, you will get to the position where you have your 1 million people or so marching down O'Connell Street in Dublin. But we're not there just yet. But we're moving towards that, so we'll be positive about that. But we got to realize this government are out to get us.
Oh yeah, courage is courageous. Sorry, courage is contagious.
Yes,
courage is contagious. But the stark reality is that our government are incentivizing these people to come to Ireland. If our government, if they are really serious about stopping the mass uncontrolled immigration into Ireland, stop incentivizing them. Cut the money. Pay them, cut the money, no money, gone, no allowances, no benefits. Okay, there are not vast numbers heading for Latvia, right? For a reason, they're heading for Ireland, for Treasure Ireland. Stop paying them. Okay, no more, no welfare, no handouts. End of story. You arrive here in Ireland. You arrive here illegally. Out you go. Goodbye. Go.
You don't even get off the boat or the plane or the bus.
Good luck. Goodbye. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's number one. Number two. The laws of the land. I mean, around here, I see Latvian cars every day. Sorry, I see Ukrainian cars every day of the week around Cavan Town. Okay, some of them are much better than my car, I can assure you. Okay, they're not paying tax. They're not paying the same insurance rates that Irish people are paying for. They're having their car repairs covered by the state.
Yeah,
the Irish state, the Irish government are paying to have these cars repaired. Okay, listen, it's a farce. Right, it's not funny. I mean, this is a farce. Okay, what's happening? It is despicable what's happening. But our government are doing this in the knowledge that most Irish people are just sitting on their hands and they're not willing to react. Okay, we need a campaign of civil disobedience in Ireland to focus their minds. Okay, that's why we need a proper, coherent leadership structure in this new Irish nationalist movement. We need to launch a campaign of civil disobedience peacefully. We need to peacefully protest. We need to robustly peacefully protest. I will never condone violence. Never condone violence. But I totally agree with you. People need to get out and protest in the local villages and the local towns. Okay, it's great. And you know what I mean? They go to one protest, they might be apprehensive at going to the first protest, but then they'll get courageous. Courage is contagious. Okay, but the government have another plan in place here by building these plantation centres, let's say in City West and throughout the country. They are. I mentioned irritation earlier on. We're a mere irritation to them. They don't like having to. You know, the people turning up in Kinnegad and in Kilcock and in Oldcastle and other towns. Their preferred option now is to have all these invaders in kind of set locations. Right, in specially constructed locations. You mentioned Sligo, we have City West. City West is going to hold, I'd say you could be talking tens of thousands by the time they're finished, if they do construct apartment blocks, which I suspect they will do. But we need unity. Like, how many Irish people are willing to stand up and be counted? How many Irish people are willing to fight for the survival of Ireland and the survival of the Irish race? That's a big question we have to ask here, right? Like you mentioned bubbles as well earlier on. Okay, you could say the way things have gone in the last 10, 20 years or so, we are all in our own little bubbles because there's no debate anymore. You're either on one side or the other side, which is utterly ludicrous, right? We need diversity of thought in Ireland. That's what we need. We don't need the synthetic diversity that's been forced on us by our government, right? We are a small race of people, okay, and we have to fight for the survival of our race, of our tribe, okay. No other tribe is going to come in and rescue us. We're going to have to fight for the survival of our own race and our own tribe.
Indeed we are. Well, next stage is, I suppose, well, actually, the next stage isn't Dublin. The next stage is tonight in Kinnegad.
Yeah,
And there's
yes,
the thing is too, and this is just an observation on my part, and this is what people are coming to me saying as well before the big Dublin protest, is there needs to be some kind of a directory, or someone needs to put together where all these protests are happening, almost even a calendar that could be shared, because there's so many happening. And if people don't use, for example, Facebook, or they don't use Twitter or whatever, and the people that are organizing them, putting them up on one platform, like I don't use pretty much any other social media. I just post onto YouTube at the minute. So if I get information sent to me, then I'll be able to try and share it when I'm making an upload like I'm doing today. But if people aren't kept in the loop, or at least there isn't a central database, because these are happening more, it's not like it's one every 6 weeks somewhere in Ireland. These are happening almost on a daily basis now. And even in the north and Northern Ireland at the minute, there's people protesting nearly every night all over the place now. This is starting to gather momentum as well.
I'm watching what's happening in Northern Ireland very, very closely. Look, we don't want to go back to the bad old days.
No, we don't.
I remember. I used to go to bed here as a young child. I used to be frightened after listening to the news. The news and radio aired, and RT radio. We had a radio at the time, in the early years of the Troubles, and I was only a young child. I went to bed flipping. Some nights I went to bed scared. You know what I mean?
How do you think I felt?
Oh yeah. You were living in it.
My windows were shaking.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you this. We don't want to see a return to the violence. Now, the people are not talking about the fact that what happened in Ballymena, that was the third attack on young girls in Ballymena in a very short space of time. And I know there are a number of individuals before the courts at the moment.
There are.
But we really, long before the influx of mass, long before the current uncontrolled flow of illegal aliens, illegal immigrants started appearing in Ireland, we were a dumping ground for criminals and social welfare tourists since 2004. And there's one ethnic group, the majority of whom, Roma Gypsies, not every one of them, but the majority of Roma Gypsies are parasites. Okay, they're of no benefit. They're of no benefit to Ireland. Okay, I know people don't like describing human beings as parasites, but I've dealt with these people. I dealt with them for many years when I was a guard. These people are leeches, they are parasites, and they have no right to be in Ireland. But what did our geniuses do? The poor travellers that had their own traveller movement for many years, and our government then have lumped in the Roma community with them. It's now the traveller and Roma community, okay, or group, or whatever. All right, that's unfair. I know travellers that don't want to be associated with the Roma. They don't. Our traveller people, our travelling people are a unique ethnic group. All right. And they should be cherished and respected. Now, I know a lot of people don't like travellers. I'm not one of those people. I have always had a great relationship with members of the travelling community in this country, and I make no apologies or no excuses for that. There's some travellers that I am very friendly with. Okay, and I will never speak out against them. Okay, they have their problems. There are a lot of travellers involved in criminality, and you know what I mean. We don't have to go into that now. We know that, but I don't know. There are tens of thousands of Roma people here in this country. For what reason? Why are they here? They're here to fucking screw our social welfare system.
Haven't said that, because people will be listening to this and that's a bit rough. It's a bit rough saying that. But in terms of, let me give it a little bit of balance here too. There's Irish parasites and leeches. We've encountered some of them in Carrickmacross. They're infesting, and notice I used that word at the beginning, infesting the Dáil at the minute. How many people are sitting in the Dáil taking the TD's wages, taking the soup, and at the same time they're making coin off the back of iPass centre landlords getting 50, 60, 70 grand a month. Some families are making tens of millions. So this is the whole thing. Is it fair to say, in summary at the minute, Ireland as a body is covered in leeches, okay, of varying ethnicities, varying social standings, but they've all got the hooks in, and they're sucking every last bit of blood out of Ireland that they can. And that's why it's crucial. And I just want to round it up at this, because I want to, if you're free next week, actually, I'd like to talk to you again to look at the fallout or the happenings that will happen after what happens on Sunday, the post-mortem, if you will, to the Dublin protest on Sunday, and see how that stacks up against what's going to be done on a political front. So for now, anyway, I want to call it on this, because there's so much more we could talk. We could talk all day here, but there's so much going to happen over the next few days. I think we've set it up, and then what we'll do is we'll hopefully revisit it if you're free someday next week, and dig into it in a little bit more depth. Would you be okay to do that?
Oh yes, Rick. Yeah, but in relation to, listen, I'm not underestimating the problems we have at home in our own country with our own people. I mean, there are lots of leeches and parasites here, but we're stuck with them.
I know.
We are stuck with them, right?
I know.
But
I know. They're part of the fabric.
Yeah. We have to deport the tens of thousands of criminals and social welfare tourists.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that are in this country from mainland Europe, right? And the bogus, the many thousands of bogus asylum seekers that have invaded this country over the last few years. They all have to be thrown out together. I don't care if they all go in the same planes.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
They have to be removed from the country. But just to conclude, we are fighting for the very survival of the Irish race. We are at war for the survival of the Irish race. Okay, I cannot say that loudly enough. Right, and we have to stand up and fight. People power does work. People should realize that there is strength in numbers. Courage is contagious.
Yeah.
Please don't stay at home. Please get out and fight for the survival of your country. Fight for the survival of your race, the Irish race. This is Ireland, our Ireland, and we will fight like hell to save it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I've been listening to you. Just I'm going to get the last word in here, to the extent that I've been listening to you talking now. I only met you for the first time at the start of May. We bumped into each other at Carrickmacross, and you were talking there. Then you talked again there. I've heard you talking at RD. I've heard you talking at Castle Blaney, and your rhetoric and your delivery is becoming increasingly impassioned. That's my notice. That's my observation on you delivering messages. I like listening to you talk a lot, like talking to you, but I think your speeches reflect the urgency of the situation that we find ourselves in at the minute. So share this interview, folks, if you can. Cut and paste the link, drop it into your Facebook groups, drop it into your WhatsApp groups, use whatever social media that you use, even email it to people. Let people understand what's at stake here. Let them know about the local protests, and of course the big one in Dublin on Sunday. John, for now, thank you very much for taking time out of your morning to talk to me. That's John Wilson. I'm Rick Bunn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media. Over and out.